Recording in progress.
Call this meeting to order. This is the special call meeting of April 19th, 2023. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. We're going to begin this, or today, excuse me. We're going to open this meeting with a word of prayer, and we're going to follow that with the pledge. And I'd like to ask that everyone who is able to please stand. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we just praise you for this time. We can come out and discuss these issues. We just ask that you would continue to bless our county, our state, and our country, Lord, and bless our leaders, our first responders, and of course our troops that keep us safe. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our agenda approval. Is there anything needs to be, any changes into this agenda?
No changes.
No changes. Call for a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion for approval. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of approval? Motion carried by all. So we have two items under old business. These items will be heard at our next Board of Commissioners meeting. These items were tabled from April the 11th, and we'll move forward to the Commissioners with a approval or denial vote. So item number one and item number two, I mean, they go together. I mean, obviously there will be separate votes, but the first is the rezoning, and second is the sketch plan. I'm sure we'll be discussing, the sketch plan along with the rezoning. Item number one is a public hearing for Greg Coleman as agent for William Roger Spikes III, ETAL. Request to rezone 14.86 acres from AR1 to AR2 to I1 to allow for industrial development located on Old Augusta Road. This is the 5th district. Ms. Concan.
On April 11th, we did a brief presentation on this and heard from supporters and opponents and stopped there. We did not hold a vote. So I'll go through the presentation again briefly. But on the screen, you see the three parcels that are actually the subject of this rezoning request. They are the three outlined in red. So this request for rezoning is for a warehouse development. In our ordinances, warehouses are permitted in I1, heavy industrial. The scale of proposed warehouse development, which is over 1 million square feet in total, exceeds the threshold to trigger a regional review. So we submitted information supplied by the applicant to the Regional Commission via an online state website. That's a Department of Community Affairs website. The regional review was given the number 3945. A regional review was initiated. Information was sent to all the surrounding jurisdictions that are stakeholders and affected parties. And the review, the comment period ended April 4th. We fully expected to receive a report before the 11th, but because of the volume of comments and just the need for an internal review at the Regional Commission, they held the report, and so we did not have it in time for our meeting on April 11th. They did supply it by the end of the week, so we had it on April 14th. We knew what the comments were. They had been able to send us that information, but we didn't have the actual final report because they needed to do some internal proofing. So going back to the development, the parcels are located in the inner management zone for Abercorn Creek, and where intensive uses and impervious cover could negatively affect water quality, so that is not in dispute by anybody. The site design will include spill responses, spill site management, and stormwater management adequate to protect drinking water supplies, and that is as a consequence of an earlier rezoning from last year, where the City of Savannah and Effingham County officials met and determined what were the best practices that needed to be attached to these projects in this area. And that is an agreement that was reached between the city and the county, and those are items that we made available to the project engineer and have already discussed with them. Going along, Old Augusta Road is a designated truck route, so the county is seeing a lot of interest in rezoning to industrial in this corridor, and in fact, these parcels represent almost the last ones to go to industrial. There'll be just 2 left up here at Abercorn Road, but these 3 are kind of the last little island of non-industrial in this immediate area. So we weren't surprised to see an application, and we've been working with the applicant to process it. The proposed entrance may be full access at this time until planned improvements are constructed. The county is planning to add roundabouts and to improve safety overall on the road. So when those improvements go in place, it's likely that the proposed entrance would be a right in, right out, and that's just the nature of connectivity with, there's not a driveway across from it, so there won't be a roundabout there, but trucks exiting here would turn right, go up to where the point where the roundabout will be constructed, and then can turn back down and go to Highway 21 that way. The parcels are surrounded, as I said, by I-1 property. Wetlands and stormwater infrastructure on the proposed development site will provide more than the required buffers. There's a good deal of wetlands in this area, and that's always been noted. This parcel, for example, is almost entirely covered. The blue represents flood zone A, and we're also aware of the additional requirements for that. In my staff report, I also mentioned that the Regional Commission had not sent the report by the time of the April 11th meeting, and that is pursuant to, and we followed the processes outlined in both the county ordinances, which require a recommendation from the planning board before we can add it to an agenda for the Board of Commissioners. So we simply could not take this forward without your vote, but the state rules prohibited us from holding a vote until we had a finalized report in our hands from the Regional Commission. So we followed those procedures when we asked you to discuss but not to vote on the April 11th. So as I said, on April 14th, we received the report. We've included it in the packet that's displayed on our website, and also that was included in your packet. And there are extra copies over there on the podium stand for anyone who's interested. Comments were received from the City of Savannah, Georgia Conservancy, and Effingham, Georgia Green. And as I said before, the properties in the inner management zone for Abercorn Creek, following an earlier rezoning, as I said, the county and city have developed an agreed set of best management practices for any development in this area. So, our review engineers will be looking at those when they are reviewing any development plans for this general development area. And that's it. Staff are recommending alternative 1, which is approval. And the conditions are listed below, and if you'd like, I could read through them, but you may wish to discuss them amongst yourselves too.
All
And
right.
the applicant is here.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions or comments from the board at this time?
No.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak either in favor or against this request? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Hilburn. I am with 100 Miles. We are a coastal nonprofit working to preserve both our communities and our environment. We understand that due to the port expansion, there is massive warehouse development up and down Highway 16, 17, 21, you pick, and we understand the need to try to get some of those warehouses development and into our tax base here in Effingham County. You do not see us stand before you and oppose every single warehouse that you intend to develop here. We do oppose this one 100% and ask you to please deny this permit. We are making now what I feel is an unethical decision. I mean, is it ethical to threaten 400,000 residents and businesses' water supply? The agreement between the City of Savannah and Effingham County and the discussions bases the idea that we can move the Savannah drinking water intake, the water intake further up the Savannah River. Talking to engineers, we're looking at about $500 million to do that kind of a project. That will all come out of the taxpayers' pockets. We don't even know for sure that we can do that. It has to go through EPD, a variety of water councils, et cetera, et cetera. Likely, it would take about 10 years. So why would we threaten or potentially threaten our water intake at this time? This is not sound planning. We are at a point on the coast where we are being threatened from all directions. We have sea level rise, we have flooding, we have all of these things going on. And to continue to develop in the same sort of 1950s style, concrete it and put a warehouse on it, is short-sighted. It's not good planning. I've been listening to the Effingham Board of Commissioners and talked with the staff and management. You guys are smart, you're thoughtful, you've done some amazing work on housing. This site is not the place for a warehouse. This site is not the place for development. It threatens the water supply for 400,000 users. And it's so darn close. All it's gonna take is a spill. You will have no time to recover. There will be no resiliency. We will be out of water in Chatham and Effingham counties. Is that really something that you guys want to take on for this location? I looked at the alternatives that were presented by your planning team. Those are some great alternatives. I would prefer that to going ahead and permitting what the first recommendation is. But we strongly encourage you to deny this. There are lots of locations in Effingham County. We've worked through your future land use, where you can put these warehouses, where you can develop, to make sure you increase your tax base, to make sure you're doing good economic development. However, economic development, when it threatens our community's resilience, is not good. It's not even okay. It's not a fair trade. It's a net loss. Right now, you all have the decision whether or not you are going to potentially threaten this water supply in hope that you can move it upriver in 10 years. In hope that your taxpayers will go, sure, we don't mind paying more taxes, another $500 million to have clean water, to have that water. We are growing rapidly, as you guys know. We need clean water. We cannot not have it for a month, 2 months, if anything is threatening this supply. I encourage you strongly to deny the permit today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak either in favor or against this request? Yes, sir.
My name's Joe Heinley, and I'm here to speak against it. I've been buying water here a long time, and it ain't getting cheaper, mainly because of the expense of cleaning it. The last time I was down at that creek, it wasn't any cleaner than it was in the past, and it ain't getting cleaner. The more runoff we allow in there, the more money we're gonna pay to clean it, if we can clean it. And I think that's what this lady's talking about. It's because you can't just clean it. You know, I was just watching what's happening down there in Brunswick, and storing plastic in a warehouse, that's not hazardous until it catches on fire. And you know what they did? They sprayed it with foam that we already know is a carcinogen. All that foam is now in the Turtle River, which is already full of PCBs. You know, we're just not thinking about our grandchildren here. I mean, we're just not. And you folks need to think about yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heinley.
We have a caller on Zoom who'd like to speak.
Go ahead, caller.
Hello, I can come on video if you prefer. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to speak and share comment. My name is Chastity Malloy, and I would like to speak out against this proposal, this proposed development, primarily because of the issues that are raised in the room, the issues that were raised in publications that I saw that brought this to my attention, that this was a area that was being proposed for development. I can't speak as expertly as the woman who just spoke in the room, but I concur with all of her sentiments and her provisions. I think the threat is too much. The threat is too much. And we do know that there are other proposed sites, better sites, that do not threaten the water supply for the residents. I'm a resident of Chatham County, and I know just seeing how much more damaging storms have been, or just what rapid rain will do with regards to flooding. And And we won't have enough time to mitigate that plan should the worst happen. And I think we have to always be mindful of how to create and build and sustain a more resilient coastal community. And again, there's 400,000 people. I just think we need to look at the people, the faces, and the names behind this who will be impacted should this development move forward. The ripple effects would be even more damaging. So I just think while we're ahead of it now, I would like and appreciate for you to take these concerns, these very just and solid concerns, into consideration and deny the development for this location due to the threat to our water supply. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malloy. Do you have anything? Do you have anyone else on the phone?
No, sir.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Greg Coleman. I'm with Coleman Company. I'm here representing the property owners for this development and the rezoning. A couple points I want to make. I mean, you know, I do understand the concern, proximity to the intake. Certainly need to keep that in mind and do whatever we can, and certainly agree with the additional conditions that were agreed upon between the city of Savannah and Effingham County, and those will be implemented and reviewed by the county's review engineers so that we can make sure we do take those additional steps in addition to your development ordinance to make sure that, you know, if anything were to happen, we've got a way to manage that, right? You know, as you all know, there's already a lot of development through this corridor. These are the last parcels left undeveloped, two of which the bulk of the development's happening on are already zoned industrial. You know, in way of floodplain mitigation and you know, the flooding concerns, we will be having to meet y'all's ordinance and meet the requirements of FEMA with the development. Your staff will make sure that we do that. And we agree with the conditions as far as putting additional BMPs in for this development to make sure that, you know, something like what everyone else is talking about is not happening. Other thing I would like to point out is this is distribution warehouse. This is not, you know, Georgia Pacific. It's not another Georgia Pacific. It's not a manufacturing site. There's no processed water here. There's nothing of that nature. This is not heavy industrial use. This is warehouse distribution. You know, we went through, Doug Faircloth went through the report and and the way that these intake facilities are assessed and the threat level to them. The warehouse distribution is a very, very low threat level. This is not a heavy industrial site. This being developed here versus even a residential neighborhood actually brings the threat level of the intake facility down versus even a neighborhood. These are trucks that are well maintained, that have standards and standard inspections and everything else that have to happen. We're going to have a lot of detention pond here. The outfall is going to be into a lot of undeveloped land before it reaches the river. You know, this river is also tidal, so all the developments through here, Plant Vogel even, you know, it can impact its intake. The Savannah River, Abercorn Creek, all this is the main drainage basin for this entire area of Georgia. You know, it's not just this one site. I know the proximity is close. There will be no stormwater that leaves this site that does not go through the BMPs that we've agreed to. So, we thank you for your time.
Do you have a
You have
question?
any
Anyone have
questions?
any questions?
So you studied looking at different land use development scenarios and their potential threat. I was
Right.
curious, you know, one thing I've been trying to wrap my head around is this is currently zoned agricultural land, right? There would be nothing precluding the trees to be harvested and somebody opening a sod farm or something of that nature if it was viable to do in ag zoning that would require a lot of chemical, a lot of fertilization. So we needed, I just was encouraged us to consider that. I thought that was a decent point from a standpoint there are other uses. Any other use, you know, is going to have some amount of potential impact. So it's just as a board think about that. So I'm just curious if y'all it looked at anything beyond just residential.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, you know, with residential neighborhood, I mean, you've got herbicides, you've got pesticides, you've got fertilizers, you've got people dumping their oil in the storm drains, you've got all these things that can happen. You've got a lot of people there that don't always follow the rules, and you've got a lot of other things to consider. You think, oh, well, industrial and residential, but you've got a lot of individuals doing sometimes whatever they want to. And also, I mean, the runoff from somebody trying to keep your yard green. I know where I live, there's a lot of golf courses. Our ponds and everything else, they all turn over, all the fish die, you know, once every 2 or 3 years. You know, I've never seen that in an industrial site, right? I get it, it's got the, you know, the look and feel of something that's bad, but really and truly, you've got people coming here going to work. You've got a lot of detention ponds, and you've also got stormwater permits that you have to, you know, abide by here. Whereas the neighborhood, you know, there's a lot of risk when you get a lot of people involved, and you know, who knows what they're putting on their yards, who knows what they're putting down the storm drain, you know, or flushing down their toilet. So anyway.
I do have one question. At the last meeting, I mean, there was some discussion about, I guess, the elevation of this property, well, not the property in question, but the property directly adjacent to the treatment plant, that the actual, I guess, plant is sitting on higher ground. So I guess, can you speak to how your development flows and where the water's gonna go if there is?
So if you can see in our site plan, we've got the detention pond shown in blue. So we will pipe or surface drain all the stormwater, capture all the stormwater from all the impervious areas to make sure that they go back through our stormwater management system. That is in y'all's ordinance already. We have to do that on every project. That would certainly happen here. You know, and you know, one other thing I would like to point out: this property is a lot bigger than what, you know, we're utilizing it for. If you notice, there's a lot of undeveloped area. The vast majority of the wetlands are being left intact. The only wetland impact that we're going to have on this project would be just for the access road to get in there. So we are impacting. We'll be filing a nationwide permit, which is a under half-acre permit, not an individual permit that you're seeing on most of the developments through this corridor, where they're impacting acres and acres of wetlands. And we certainly have projects like that as well. But this one in particular, this sketch plan only shows a half-acre of wetland impact. So we are trying to be mindful of the wetlands and the sensitivity of the site, and not trying to take this property, take every single tree off of it, and, you know, get another 500,000 square feet on the property. We are trying to be mindful of that. So,
What did you say, Mr. Coleman, was the intent of the warehouse? It wasn't going to be manufacturing; it was just going to be storage, right?
correct, just distribution.
But what do you see the future to be? I mean, in 20 years from now, that thing could be a toxic waste dump for all we know.
Well, I get that. I mean, hey, I can't sit here and tell you exactly what it would be 20 years from now, okay? But what I would say is, you know, that the county does have ordinances in place. They've got a code enforcement department. And I don't know off the top of my head, but I think anything manufacturing or toxic, and Teresa may be able to speak to this, but would have to go to a higher zoning level. Maybe it's a conditional use, whatever it may be. So what we're asking for today, for the zoning classification we're asking for, the sketch plan that we're showing, this is a distribution building. It's set up for distribution. It has all the dock doors. I mean, this is specifically a distribution building. When you see a manufacturing building, it certainly would not be the size and shape and, you know, have dock doors every 13 feet. I mean, that's just not what this is. So I'm not telling you, I can tell you what it's going to be in 20 years, but this is a tried and true distribution building where they're loading and unloading trucks, storing material.
I think our big concern is, I mean, we realize that you're trying to zone agricultural residential to industrial, and that's going to be the entrance to that warehouse project.
Yes, sir.
And egress and ingress. So we're all concerned, at least I am, about what could possibly happen to the drinking water that supplies 400,000 plus people. Now,
Yes, sir.
I've been in places where there's, in big cities, in China, where there's no drinkable water.
Right.
There's no potable water,
Sure.
you know, because they've polluted the river.
Right.
So we're all concerned about, at least I'm concerned.
Right. No, and hey, it is a real concern. I'm not standing up here saying that. But again, I'm just gonna go back to that, you know, if you really start looking and thinking about the other possible alternatives for the site, these warehouse properties are kept clean. They are kept neat. There's not, I've never been to one that's got trash everywhere, that's, you know, dumping anything. Again, you know, you've got employees coming to work. I think in my mind, the biggest concern would, you know, be oil leaking on the concrete, right? I mean, and it's got to go through 2, 3, 4 detention ponds and then make its way all the way through an outfall as well, right? Which we're going to be putting additional BMPs in place if there is some type of spill, which the only type of spill that I could see at this site would be a diesel or oil, and it's going to be one truck, okay? We're not talking about, this isn't a, you know, a tanker facility. This isn't anything that's got the potential for a ton of hazardous materials all being, you know, spilled or dumped or illegally dumped, whatever it may be. That's just not what this is. So I just, you know, ask y'all to consider that.
It's just very hard to foresee the future and what might happen there, you know?
Sure.
I think one of the people in the audience mentioned that, you know, the plastic went on fire and created, you know, a real foam retardant, you
Sure.
know, that was, you know, leaching into the soil.
Right. Yeah, and developer's not here, but I think I can say with pretty good confidence, this facility will not have a foam, AFFF or anything like that. AFFF foam, very toxic. It's all over the news. You can see it. I am working on a project right now that has AFFF, but it is a service center for Gulfstream. Okay, that AFFF is for fueled aircraft. So again, this is standard distribution warehouse. I've never worked on a distribution warehouse that had foam fire system.
I see.
Have not. So this will all just be sprinkled water.
Greg, can you elaborate a bit on those other BMPs, just so we understand that a bit better? So we're gonna have the buffer that's just the zoning buffer.
Sure.
That's just a zoning buffer.
Sure.
If you could elaborate a bit on those, that'll be on the outside, or I guess on the inside of the project.
Sure. So I think there's a lot of different options. We've discussed some of them to tell you we've got it figured out exactly. We don't, but you know, obviously would permit through them. But I mean, additional BMPs, instead of the stormwater just going directly into the detention pond and then flowing freely to the outfall, we're gonna have some way, whether it's a 4-bay, okay, a smaller pond that the stormwater would go through prior to going into the detention pond. We've got to detain the 100-year storm event. Okay, and then, you know, some way, if something were to happen in a large volume, right, in a large amount, something bad happens on site, we've got a way to stop the stormwater flow. Okay, these ponds are very big. The site's very big. If you did have some type of spill or oil leak or something out of a truck in the truck court, I mean, it's going to take hours, if not days, and be a rain event for anything to get off site. I mean, we're talking a 100-year storm event plus a truck leaking every bit of diesel out of it. So there's so many through the flow path to leave the project. It's not, if it rains or something gets spilled, it's not in Abercorn Creek in 5 minutes. It's in Abercorn Creek, you know, in a day or two. Okay, so there's going to be time to do that, and those BMPs will be in place to protect that from leaving the site.
So even along that common property line, that's the one that everybody's so sensitive with. Every bit of grading is going to come from that point and be graded
To our
down
site.
through the site.
Yes.
There'll be nothing that.
And also there's a 5-foot berm that's going across there, so physically water cannot go directly to the creek.
Okay, I know you can't see it because the
Yeah,
TVs are already.
yeah. So
that's
in that buffer, there's a 5-foot tall berm. Okay, so it's blocking. It's not possible for water to go that way.
And then the final outfall is out of that last pond into the wetland system.
Right, which then has to migrate through the wetland system and make it all the way to the creek.
Okay.
And if you look at the site plan too, we are not trying to go over into even the upland areas adjacent to Abercorn Creek. All that is being left alone, undisturbed, not developed. We're not going across the city's I&D lines that have an easement there. So everything is, protected as much as it can be going towards Abercorn Creek.
I think so for that.
Any further questions?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Yes, sir.
Chester Porter. I spoke to y'all the other night, and you were curious, you made a statement about what we would have in 20 years. And there's been a lot of talk about the water quality of that site. I worked for the Fish and Wildlife Service for 25 years, and we've done exhaustive studies on water quality down on the lower ends and how it would affect the upper part of the river system. And probably within the next several years, they're gonna have to do something about the saltwater encroachment. Now, they're down to pumping one time a day. They built the city, they built a reservoir in Chatham County, about 68 acres, I think, so that they can pump water in there and have it as a reserve when they can't pump out of Abercorn Creek because of saltwater encroachment. And it's gonna get worse. The more they do down there on the lower end, the more salt water can encroach up this area here. And not only does it affect the drinking water, it affects the quality of the plant life and everything else, and the fish. But that didn't seem to be a problem with them when they decided to deepen the harbor, even against the what the Fish and Wildlife Service said that would happen. They went ahead and done it anyway. And they dredge in the river periodically to keep it deeper. And every time they do that, it allows salt water to encroach further up the river. And it will continue to do that, and it will get worse. And it is worse when there's a storm, a hurricane, or anything else that pushes that much more salt water up the creek. Used to not do that, but it did. All of the industry, during the Civil War, and all of the cotton and the sugar and the rice and the stuff that they planted down on those parts down there stopped because of the saltwater encroachment. That happened years and years ago. When we made it worse, every time we deepen the harbor, it makes it worse, and it comes further up. So, according to the Fish and Wildlife Service timeline, probably in the next several years, they're either gonna have to move that plant or desalinate it, one or the other, because it will not be able to pump water, as much water as they need. They're down, I think, pumping 18,000 gallons of water a day now, as opposed to what they used to. And the reason is they can only pump certain times of the day, and that's it. So when you're talking about water quality, you need to think about 10 years, 15 years down the road, what you're gonna have that comes up in the saltwater encroachment. And what you can do about that, I don't know. We tried to tell them, don't deepen the harbor that they wanted to deepen, but they did. And that's still in the works. The bigger the ships, the deeper the harbor's gotta be. The Coast Guard says at low tide, there's gotta be so much water space between the bottom of the ship and the bottom of the ship. So, in order to do that, they have to keep pumping the dirt out of it, the mud, the sand, to keep those. And they're talking about building a bigger bridge to let bigger ships in, so therefore they gotta have the deeper harbor. So the problem is not gonna be something that comes out of this warehouse here. It's gonna come from downriver in the form of salt coming up here to run the drinking water. So,
Fascinating information.
yes. If you will check the Fish and Wildlife Service, their records, they, like I said, they done an exhaustive study. It lasted about 5 or 6 years. And they done all the plant studies, water quality studies, everything that had to do with saltwater encroachment, because they were dead set against deepening the harbors because of that. It also puts the bottom of the river closer to the aquifer. And at some point, if they went down deep enough and cut through the aquifer, then the entire water system would be contaminated. So it's not just a river, it's everything that's tied to the deepening of the harbor and all of the industry that's down in Chatham County. It just slowly creeps up this way, and it will continue to get worse. And nothing that you can do now can stop that from happening without either moving that plant further up the river, which they've discussed, or desalinating it, one or the other. I don't know which one would be cheaper or if it would even be possible to do that. But, I would think probably within, and I don't know for 100%, I'd have to go back and look at all the data. But within the next 5 years, they're gonna have a serious problem with saltwater again. They've already got it. It's gonna get worse. So, you know, if you compare that to what they're talking about building a warehouse, to me, there's no comparison. So in 5 or 10 years, you're gonna have to do something anyway, because there ain't gonna be no fresh drinking water out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Does anyone else wish to speak? Anyone else on call?
No,
Is Mr. Zipper on?
Yes.
He's not, okay. So I'm gonna close public comment, discussion from the board.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious what the rest of the board thinks, but the first item is the zoning related to just those yellow parcels that we're looking at on the upper left-hand side. So 95 to 99% of what we've been discussing specifically there was not related to those parcel zonings. Can we go back to the one that shows the current adjacent zonings?
Zoning map.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I look at that map, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that map from a zoning perspective standpoint for these particular parcels, not, I know the one that's been debated and discussed has the big star on it, but that's not actually in the zoning process of what we're talking about right now. It is on the next item, I understand that, but, just curious if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
I mean, at face value, it looks like that holds, this rezoning holds the key, but I mean, to me, I don't believe it is. I mean, I believe this, because our commissioners have already rezoned that property, that I believe it's going to be developed. And I think that and hope between the county and Savannah that they've put the right, precautions in place to.
Inevitably, all those parcels will be industrial.
Yeah, and the pink ones or the red ones already are zoned industrial, right? So, I mean, what we're talking about is the green and the light blue, green, whatever that is there, those right there. So that's the zoning that we're talking about.
The 3 stars.
I didn't realize that the ones further north were still, that have been already zoned, industrial.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, in fact, about a year or so ago, when the first proposal that affected these 2 interior lots also included a few 4 or 5 lots along Abercorn Road. So the rezoning that took place almost a year ago, covered these lots as the entrance. And in fact, they were, we were looking at, it was across from Logistics Parkway, and there was a roundabout proposed for there, and that would have accommodated,
I see.
the driveway here. So it was these 1, 2, 3, 4, I think the first 5 lots. Yeah. So there was a development plan, and that was the original rezoning, and that was the one that led to the agreement with Savannah on best management practices. That developer, I guess, walked away, and so we have a new proposal represented by Mr. Coleman from Mr. Cowan, and that includes these parcels. And that is the only reason it's back in front of you. Had they been able to acquire those, original development parcels and come back with a sketch plan, it would have already been rezoned, so it would have still come through the planning board process and board of commissioners. But had the original parcels been part of this current application, then it would have skipped. It wouldn't have needed a rezoning. It's only because it's been reconfigured to include these different parcels. That's why there's a 2-step process today.
Agreed. Any further discussion from the board? I'll call for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with staff.
I have a motion to approve staff recommendations. Any discussion? Call for a second.
I'll second that.
Second. All those in favor of approval? Any opposed? Motion carried by all. Item 2, sketch plan. Greg Coleman is agent for William Roger Spikes III, ETAL. Request approval of a sketch plan for Effingham Business Center located on Old Augusta Road, zoned AR1, AR2, I1. Proposed zoning is I1 is the 5th district. We have a sketch plan. I think we've all looked at it. Sketch plan is not a public hearing. Is there any additional information you'd like to add to this sketch plan, Ms. Duncan?
No, but, well, also included on the staff report, I just detail our process. So on March 20th, we originally met with Mr. Coleman to discuss this, and that's when we shared with him all the information that had been agreed on between the county and the city of Savannah. And our engineers were present. We held a development team meeting, so everyone was on the same page. Everyone knows what's expected here. A variance was approved a year ago, again, with the original rezoning for the buffer that's along here. The buffer was reduced, and that was subject to some extra conditions at the time. And then in this current sketch plan, we're seeing that the general kind of layout has been kept, and that variance that's in place and attached to the line has been taken advantage of here for this layout as well. The proposed development, as we can see, is in flood zone A, and so there will be some letter of map revision application to FEMA that would be required at some point along the development plan review process. And the staff report also includes the details from the agreement between Savannah and the county about the kind of BMPs that we are looking for.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Questions, comments?
I guess I have just two, and this is both to Teresa, if I could. On the map that we have in our packet, there's a green bar across the frontage on like Old Augusta. And I'm referring to the clean version of the map there. You can see that. I was just curious. Can't read exactly what that's saying. Is that just the buffer line that's showing? I was trying to understand how the access was working there, really. I know we hadn't talked about access at all, but.
That is, gonna try to, it says here, it says 75-foot buffer. I'm looking at the version that's in the file here. What he's talking about is this here. So let's look at the zoning in that area is across Old Augusta Road is industrial, and so the required buffer would be about 25 feet between industrial zoning. So any buffer along the frontage could be 25 feet. Because there's going to be a driveway there, that is something that would tend to reduce probably, but 25 feet would be what we would look at and require industrial to industrial.
Okay.
So the site plan, the sketch plan that's in here is showing, if I'm reading that correctly, it says 75-foot buffer. It could be that just the way the site is laid out for the sketch plan that they have that room there. I can show you the hard copy.
Yeah, I did see it was on there, so, I mean, just to be clear, we would more than likely intend to provide what the county requires there, 25 instead of 75 feet.
Right. And then, while you're there, if I can ask a question or two. So what was confusing me about it actually is because that green bar actually goes across the access point even.
Right.
It looks like it was added after the fact or something. And I know you're in sketch plan level, but all the access points and controls and stuff will follow county standards from a standpoint of whatever we need from on Old Augusta Road there from
Yes.
that standpoint.
Yes.
Just when I see an access point that close to a common property line, sometimes radius returns and stuff like that become a challenge. But
Sure.
And then I will go to the area that's been the contention area. The large warehouse that's along the common property line there. Again, it's a small version, but I wanted to hopefully put it out. That what the sketch plan is showing is really the building and a fire lane, and then the property.
Correct.
And then that layout for that building, y'all are confident you will keep that? Because I think there's a benefit of what you've done from a standpoint of the truck docks and the things of that nature are further removed and further away from that common property line.
Yes, and that's a 310-foot deep building, I believe, shown on there. But those roofs are typically single pitch. They pitch the truck court, and so all the roof water would be going to the truck court through the detention ponds, and then any water we need to pick up with secondary drainage behind the building would be rainfall onto the gravel or the grass. But we're still gonna have to pick it up and run it back through our stormwater system.
Teresa, is there anything? I mean, I see that as a big benefit that I would want to be captured as part of it. I know that I'm assuming if a sketch plan revised a lot that it would have to come back through, but I don't know if somebody would catch the fact of building flips in the future would it have to come back through.
Right, so The sketch plan is going to be made available, so when we receive the site development plans, the sketch plan becomes part of that file, and our review engineers can refer to it, and they also know that this one is requiring some special attention. So we will, if there's a need at some point in the design process for some sort of major revision,
Sure.
that's going to go straight to the county manager. He'll determine whether or not he has the authority to authorize it, or he would, we would take it back to the board. So we expect to see, site development plans that look pretty similar to this, but again, if there's any major change, we'll take it up the chain of our chain
Right.
to the county manager, and he'll tell us whether we need to take it back to the board or not.
Yeah, to give you some comfort there, that building only works that way. So if we flipped it, we'd have to get roads around, it would really make it more, we'd lose a lot of square footage to do that. And it really, from a drainage standpoint and aesthetic standpoint, everything else, it makes more sense as a front-loaded building and situated that way. And also, I think that's the way it needs to be, being everything we've talked about today.
Mr. Coleman, that green line that's behind that building that you were just now discussing, is that where the berm is gonna be?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It'll be all the way along that property line, common property line between the city and this development.
I see it.
Anything further? Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
Thank you.
There is no further discussion. I'll call for a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion for approval. Is there a second?
No, second.
Second, Mr. Thompson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried by all. What's the date on that county commissioners meeting?
May
Second.
2nd,
May 2nd?
at 6 p.m.
So these two items move forward to the county commissioners on May the 2nd at 6 p.m. This is merely a recommendation to the county commissioners. Final decision will be made there. So, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we did right.